Awesome. So, hey, welcome everybody. Augmented Marketer podcast. Today we have Kim Alban as our first guest. She's a creator, designer, mentor, YouTube personality, TikTok personality, and a very outspoken person for AR. Would you say that's a accurate reflection of you?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Anything I missed on the list? I know you do a lot of things.
It's hard to put a name on one thing, but I think you did a good job.
Nice. And yeah, so like we can just jump into augmented reality. We can talk about augmented reality and marketing and sort of how brands and companies can sort of use AR to sort of help with their marketing efforts. But first, sort of want to find out a bit more about you and sort of things that you're involved in. So yeah, what got you into AR to start with?
Yeah, sheer curiosity. My first degree, my associate's degree is in photography, but I always felt like it would be a lot more amazing if we didn't have to wait for post-production to edit our images and stuff like that. So I firstly started drawing on my camera filters at the time, so a very hand-drawn approach, or illustrating on them. I was just unaware of augmented reality at the time. And years later, when Spark AR came out, I found it fascinating. I thought it was awesome. I skipped over Google Glass because I bad timing. Timing is everything. And I thought that was a little weird. I didn't really see the design aspect in it quite yet. But fast forwarding to Spark AR, jumping in there, I thought that, you know what, this is sort of what I had in mind initially with photography and my artistic attempts at that time. So I really started from there and have been making lots of AR filters since, and going more into XR as it opens up. And I think we're in a good time to get started, and anybody really, any brands, company, people willing to learn, because it's still evolving, and you can tell this because there's no one way to do one thing.
Right. Yeah. So do you feel like, AR has been around for like a long while, but do you feel like it's sort of had a recent push, a recent revival in a way? Because maybe the pandemic had something to do with it, or just the technology's become a bit more easier for people to comprehend and things like that. Do you think it's sort of come back a little bit recently?
Yeah, for sure. Right. Augmented reality and all of these technologies have been around for a good chunk of time. But I think you're spot on with a mix of COVID and also things being more accessible, more tutorials, more documentation being written in a way for everyone to understand and not just engineers, allows for people to feel more comfortable in jumping in when they know that it can be done. They just have to read something written in their language in simpler terms or follow a tutorial, which is now more accessible on YouTube than it was many years ago.
Yeah, right. I think I learn 99% of the stuff that I don't know from YouTube, and now from Twitter and from TikTok and from other places. Yeah. But it's just like education's readily available for you. And all these platforms, from my understanding, is that they're all giving free education on how to use their tool for creation. But then there's like iterations of everybody has their own sort of ways of creating. So I guess what you're also doing as well is you're educating creators and designers on how to use multiple platforms, and how to design certain filters and design filters for certain practical use and things like that. Is that right?
Yes. I would say I'm aiming to do it from a no-code perspective, because not everyone's a coder. And I think it's also easier to get people on board when you approach them from that angle. It seems far less daunting, and we still have a lot of designers in the 2D aspect that should be within these new technologies. I'm a product designer. I design websites, apps, and a bunch of other things. And a lot of us are 2D first. So in an effort to sort of get more people on board, forward, I'm taking that approach at the moment to get people excited, because there are quick wins with the current augmented reality platforms that we have now. So I'm really trying to make it more accessible through tutorials on various platforms like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok.
Nice. And when you were first sort of getting into this, did you have anybody that taught you, or did you just learn everything on your own?
I was learning, I would say through the same methods. So starting off by opening up Spark AR, going to the Learn More section. There's a good amount of documentation there actually. And, seeing if someone had done something before in a tutorial that is somewhat aligned to the vision I have, and working from there. So I would say naturally curiosity. And I often say that this is a way that people should approach jumping into augmented reality. Either follow a tutorial, because it's you don't have to really think too much there. You're following one, or opening up any one of the platforms and starting from a template and just changing some of the items within the template, because there isn't too much to set up from there. It's just being about just having fun and going from there. Learn, I think, takes the pressure off of already being a stranger in this new technology.
Yeah, I guess creators and designers are probably the most proficient and have got the most understanding about AR. But for the general public, like, what would you say one massive misunderstanding of AR is? Like, what's the one you come across the most from brands and businesses?
Right now, I think I just got approached this the other day. Like, what use case does it have for a business? Is it, why do I need this? Do I really need this? What could this even do for my kind of business? And you'd be surprised. There are so many things that augmented reality could do for different types of brands. They don't even have to be in the e-commerce world. They could just be a brand that is a coffee shop, for example. It could be something really small, but it's about, and this is where I think it gets really creative, thinking about what that brand could be like in augmented reality. Is exciting in itself, because we know what logos are in 2D, we know what color palettes and such are currently in 2D, but what is it like to create a brand in augmented reality? I think that's where it gets fun and exciting, and that unique aspect of it is really valuable.
Yeah, so I guess do you get the feeling that people are a little bit shy, or maybe feel like it's risky because they don't feel like they've seen it a lot being used a lot? They don't necessarily want to be like the first because it's risky for them, and they don't necessarily see use cases that apply to their business verticals specifically, because we know there's tons of use cases out there. But do you feel like people feel like this is the thing I usually say is that they feel like the canary down the mine. They don't want to be the first in their space to be doing it, but then they also don't want to be the last in their space to be doing it. So It's sort of a bit shy in that way. Is that sort of what you feel as well?
Yeah, for sure. Big companies and small companies alike. But with the small companies, I think it's a unique perspective. And it would be an advantage to even so much as flirt with the idea of augmented reality for their brand. Because yes, there are really big giant companies going after augmented reality, and like Apple, the headset coming out potentially late 2022, they're invested in it. Google Glass may have been very early, but it's not too late for them to come back around as well. And recently, of course, we were just talking right before this phone call, TikTok is launching their augmented reality platform, became public for everyone to utilize, and it's one of the largest attention takers right now in the market. And if they're all sort of hedging their bets towards augmented reality, I think it's worth looking into a little bit more, regardless of who you are.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's something maybe people overlook, is that these huge giant behemoth of companies are investing heavily into AR, not like in 5 years or 10 years, but like right now. And we know Meta's been investing like $10 billion from last year in the immersive space, with the first iteration being AR. TikTok have been massively into it, but I guess a lot of things have been in testing. Pinterest were very early in the game as well. So, all these huge platforms and all the advertising platforms have been definitely like hedging their bets in there. So that should be a really big sign for people to be, looking to find a way of rethinking the way that they build relationships with their, ideal customers and audiences, and how that can actually look, and like how you can reshape that into augmented reality. So have you seen, apart from like, the massive ones, have you seen any companies using AR well, like on a small level, a local level, or even just like even like a global level?
Yeah, local level, I say that I actually have a friend that's a designer. Her studio actually put together some really cool and unique AR filters for like a brand. It was actually literally a coffee shop. So she made a filter for a small coffee shop, and it was like tracked with your head. So it was actually the logo of the coffee shop, and it was really unique. It just stood out. I mean, not all of the AR filters have to be that interactive or that sort of overpowering. And it wasn't in this case. It was definitely like the brand and the company were very forward. Like, I would relate to this, like almost the logo is definitely showing for sure. But I thought it was a very interesting way to showcase what a coffee shop would look like in augmented reality. And, it was warm and inviting. And I think it just displays it in a different way. So a lot of people do think that there's, augmented reality is sort of a novel thing right now and it'll fade away and things like that. But I think right now is a good time to start exploring, because especially just talking about these other companies, it will grow for sure. And the one thing that we do know for right now is that a lot of these platforms to develop AR filters are free. So, and the only drawback is that it just has to be tied to that platform. So Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok. The drawbacks are, of course, interoperability, but right now, I think it's about strategizing where and when you could use the AR advantage. And like I mentioned before, TikTok's AR advantage it's drawing all the attention. Just became public, so I think strike as the iron is hot, because there's so much attention to be had there. And it's really powerful for a lot of companies to really show their capabilities and bring it in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the sort of questions I get quite a lot on, different interactions is there certain brands or certain verticals of e-commerce even that would benefit more from AR, or is it necessary, like there's not necessarily a limit at all in your mind?
I think so. I don't think so. I think also a fascinating concept piece. So I am pretty sure you're familiar with Snap's lenses that have only been given out to AR creators and stuff like that. I don't have one, but I saw someone make a really fascinating concept piece where they took the menu of a restaurant and they actually have the items of the restaurant, but like 3D scans. So instead of just reading words on the menu, you actually can look at the dishes in an AR kind of space. And that's far better of a use case for augmented reality, because I don't know about you, but when I go into a restaurant, I can read the words, but I want to know what it also looks like on Yelp.
Right. Yeah.
So, so being able to have a menu that's visualized and I could see all the dishes in augmented reality, I think that'd be amazing. And you could put that out instead of putting a menu out in front of your restaurant. If that could be a QR code and just be like, look at our dishes, people could stop right in the front, experience that, or come on in and experience that, depending on where you're putting that, and really have a super unique experience, or restaurant experience, just related on augmented reality. And that's, I think, mind-blowing. And I don't think we've explored things like that in not in another time that I could think of, at least.
Yeah, that's a really good example, because I'm just thinking there's literally 3 different ways of using AR there. You have the in-restaurant experience where you have the menu and then stuff pops out, things that people could look at maybe outside the menu. But even if you had like an ad running and in the experience you had the menu with the 3D AR stuff pop up and you can see what's on there. So there's all these different ways, the in-person experience, the thing to entice you, the foot traffic, and then also the the actual thing to local ads, like geographic ads. So that just shows you it's a really tiny example, like anybody listening who's wondering, potentially, oh, it's only for makeup filters or it's only for cosmetics or things like that. We've just given you a strategy of like 3 different ways of using AR. And this is exactly what I say on most interactions with people who, it's not uncommon for people to feel like it's only these things, because those are the things that we've seen a lot of. But there's so many different ways it can be used, and the only real limitation, apart from I guess the platform's limitations of what the capabilities are, is your like imagination and how you can find designers to iterate these things. And it's almost like a really important aspect of this as well is, as you said, the strategy and what's the function of not just the function, but what's the objective behind the AR experience. And then, as you pointed out, having the menu and having the food pop out can really help you, like immerse you into it and really help you decide. Because I'm exactly the same. I go to a restaurant and I'm like, I like the idea of this and I like the idea of this. And then maybe you get it and you're like, oh man, I wish I got the other thing. But of course, with this, you'll be able to see firsthand what it's like. And with AI, designers are incredible and they can make things look so accurate. I saw some examples of like loads of different foods, and there's even one I saw. This is really cool. So there's basically a dessert, but it was the actual dessert. You got this dessert, and I think it was like a mousse or something in like a pot. And then someone created an AR experience. This rocket flew out of it, and then the rocket flew out, went up in the air, and exploded, and it was like fireworks. And it's like, imagine that for like finishing your dinner. Like that's just super cool.
Yeah.
There's so many examples like that.
Exactly. And then on a global aspect, you're in another country. You don't speak the language. You don't even know what you're going to be ordering from that restaurant. But in an AR perspective, visuals work so much more than being able to translate that item in Google and then being like, okay, how do I look this up on Yelp, and that other extra step. So from a global perspective, I think that would enhance the user experience of traveling and trying different foods in different areas. So I think, and that's the exciting part, is that this is somewhat old technology that's having its second wind here, but it really is exciting when you start thinking of the unique ways in how we naturally do things. And I think that tying it back to our natural behaviors will get people more excited, just as long as the companies really look into what their audience does, wants, needs, and how they do things already. Tuning into that, I think, will be the pivotal point of adopting AR technology for that company, brand, what have you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I do feel, this is more of a personal opinion, because mainly because no one really knows what the metaverse is going to be. But I really feel like AR is going to bring the metaverse to people before it's this VR space. And VR, I think VR might take a longer time to adopt, potentially, but who knows? No one knows really. But the fact that, the glasses you're mentioning, like Facebook's glasses coming out soon, Apple are definitely doing their own, Samsung, Sony, all these companies. I literally have a list somewhere. I'll try and dig it out if anyone's interested. And it gives you all of the companies doing glasses and also all their features and then their platforms they're going to be using. So every major company is going to have their own platform and every major company is going to have their own glasses. And when those things are more adopted, we're just going to make our lives more convenient and easier by having AR there. So it could even be, as you're saying, like traveling to a new country. There may be something that, directs you into like some sort of mapping capability. And then you go to a restaurant, so there's like a menu outside popping up. And then you go into the restaurant, there's like a unique experience if they're trying to pull you to a certain place or get you to order certain things and all these things like that. And I guess people's maybe their fear a little bit is it's going to be this, the first days of the internet where there's just all these pop-ups coming up and it's just going to be like, all this stuff. And I really don't feel like that's going to be the case. I think companies are going to have a responsibility, and they realize now more than anything of getting people, building good relationships with people, and being ethical with how they're using the space and all these sort of things. So I guess on that, like on that vein, like how do you feel AR is going to roll out over the next 5 years? Like, do you see it being a mass, like adopted by everybody in the next 5 years, or do you think it's going to be very slow adoption and it's going to take even longer? How does that look for you?
It's really hard to say because I'm really okay. Speculating on the Apple headset, right? It still looks a little heavy because it's an AR VR headset. I think we need to go back to Google Glass level and have them be a little bit lighter for wider adoption. I think the first iteration of them with Apple's headset will be good insight to see if are people receptive to this. Should we move on to iteration 2? Hopefully we do, and we'll consider. I think if that goes well, in 5 years we'll have something a lot more wearable. I mean, at the same time as we're speaking, I think there are contact lenses that are augmented reality, the Mojo lenses.
Yeah.
And I've been like telling myself, remind me to check in on those contact lenses because I want to know they correct your vision, but they also have an augmented reality aspect. I think it'll be a somewhat slow adoption overall because people are still very concerned about their privacy and what companies are doing to help you be more in control of your data. Although all of our data is being breached like all the time. So I think wearables, if they get slimmer, they'll be adopted faster. But at the same time, if they're too slim, like contact lenses, I'm already seeing like negative feedback on the contact lenses because of, I think, Elon Musk's like chip. It's like too close to home. So we have to be close, but not that close.
Yeah, right. It needs to be something that's practical, but comfortable, and not just comfortable in a physical sense, but something that doesn't invade people's lives. It's interesting how these things get adopted, because if even like I was watching, I can't remember if it was Gary Vee and Mark Zuckerberg interview the other day from a while ago. It's really funny because he just keeps interrupting me the whole time. That's what I was laughing at. But they were talking about how the Facebook feed came about, and this was a really big point for me because how Facebook used to be before, it was everyone's wall, right? So everyone owned their space or whatever. Of course, Facebook was still taking data points from people. And then they came up with the feed thing. And then the feed was where you spent your time and where you found out what everyone's doing. You don't go to their walls and posts anymore. And people's reaction to the going from the feed to the wall, there was like anti-feed groups, and there was all this sort of stuff because everybody thought it was such a big change that they were like, oh, I don't want to use this platform anymore. And of course, it just became a normal thing. And I feel like that same thing is going to be happening with AR and VR and XR and this whole immersive space, because everybody's used to this, what we're doing now. Of course, most people spend their day with their face buried in this or in the screen already, but they feel like it's maybe a little bit too much of a jump to like go to VR or go to AR glasses and have some things overlaying their platform. So I think every time there's like a adoption of a new technology like this, there's going to be a lot of uncomfortable feeling towards it because it's something brand new, and as humans we like to stay with things we're comfortable, things we're familiar with already. But all the places it can be used to sort of improve people's lives and make everything easier and save you time, that's going to be the way that it gets adopted quicker, because people just want to benefit themselves really and their families and get their lives easier. So that's a really big point on if your product already does that for people, if it already solves a problem for people, put that in the AR, get them to experience how it's helping them. It's not this thing where it's like shoving something in their face, some crazy, weird effect happening, and they have no idea what it is. It's showing them firsthand. Either they try it on, they put it in their space, they use it, there's some interactive element of it, show them what it is. And that's really what a good ad does anyway. But that's all doing, via video, via image and things like that. This is like the next level of that. This is like how you can actually be immersed into the advert so that you're the subject. And I think it's almost like the earlier all the companies that are going to use this, and governments and everything, of course, because there's loads of iterations, the earlier it's going to be adopted. that's sort of my, I don't know, 2 cents on it. But also the technology needs to be there to make it sort of more applicable to people's lives. But we already have phones. We're already spending most of the time on phones anyway. So yeah, I guess, yeah, I think 5 years is probably a good time, but then it's going to, be completely dependent on the technology. And yeah, if it's not these massive glasses with a huge bank at the back or at the front or something really uncomfortable that you have to like walk around.
Yeah, exactly. As you just said, we're already accustomed to our phones. And if you're going to be thinking of crossing over to the augmented reality world, as whatever company that you are, you really should be leaning into the jobs to be done. Why did the person use your service? What did they come to do? If it was, let's say, a restaurant service, just going back to that, they came to order some food. Don't take them there in a roundabout way. It should follow a similar pattern to the experience that you are providing this to people on wherever else you might be. Changing it causes confusion, and that always brings about bad user experience. So that's just a safe way of, I think, transcending the mediums right now and thinking of AR.
Yeah, right. And I think another really big, because I do feel like with new technologies, art and expression is usually the sort of first way things get adopted by people, as well as, all the stuff we were just talking about. And I'm really interested in the world of like digital fashion or AR fashion and all this whole area, because I know obviously at the moment, we all know, fashion is like bound by physics and the fact that we can't have things flying around our heads and things like that. But when AR is more adopted by everybody, not only we can have our NFTs being showed off in a way, or like certain, digital assets and things like that, but fashion can be a completely different thing. You can be walking down the street and someone could have like a shark swimming around their head, and on a magical tricycle or something, or you're riding a unicorn. All of these things, the sky's a limit with the imagination there. So what do you think fashion is going to be? I know this is a very obscure question, but what do you think fashion is going to be like? And is that going to help with the adoption of AR?
I hope so, because we should be able to express ourselves in these different ways and these new technologies. And I really think that's a selling point for a lot of people, that for a lot of people, how they present themselves could be in this whole other different way, whether that's through AR filters or it's AR fashion. There is novelty in being able to wear these things that are just literally don't exist. But I think it's a form of expression that we've been wanting for a very long time, especially when we think of like video games, but also fashion to the next level. And we've always you always see that in movies when we talk about the future, everyone is wearing something completely different. And that always leaves me curious, like how do we get there? But I think AR fashion would be that. So I think that it will be a huge point, and I'm excited for it to roll out to a lot of other people. Right now, I think the hardest thing with AR fashion is it's a lack of interoperability. So this is what I say: if we can solve these problems and we can bring all of these digital assets over to whatever device we're using them on, I think it will make for an easier, just like rolling out and accepting AR.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. 100%. I think the way it's going to work is we're going to wear this like beige suit, this full body beige suit, maybe even like a hat, and then the AR is going to be imposed on it, and that's how it will track you. So it can be nicely tracked. I've already seen loads of companies sort of using, there's like, was it Dolce & Gabbana? They did like an AR only, what's it called? Event? What's it called when they do the catwalk?
Fashion Week.
Oh, it was Fashion Week. Yeah, right. Yeah, and they had an AR only piece. I'm not down with the fashion words, as you can tell, but I saw this. It was like this. What do you call the infinite tiara or something? And then there was a couple of the examples of it where not even. I mean, I think one of them was where the model's wearing this like beige suit and it's superimposed, but then the other one was literally like just an AR model, like wearing this thing, like walking up and down the catwalk. So yeah, I think that was going to be incredible, and I do feel that NFTs are going to play a big part of that. if they're still a big thing then, which I'm sure they will be, but who knows?
Oh,
These
yeah.
could be a different timeline.
I think they will be. I just made an NFT website the other day. I want to see how that ages, but
Nice.
yeah, the utility with NFTs, I think, and if they have utility, will be more impactful. But yeah, I'm seeing more and more like augmented reality NFTs, and I'm just curious as to what that's also going to roll out to be. But I I think we will have NFTs for a while, and they're going to be also more exciting. They could be anything essentially on the blockchain. You can make anything as long as you mint it. It's on it's on the blockchain, and you could just carry it around. It could be your AR fashion. It could be your wallet. It could be your website. It could be a whole bunch of different things. So I'm excited for this, like, sort of, for the convergence of all these technologies. So you know what? I would be happy to reach back out and have this conversation in 5 years.
Yeah, I know, 100%. Also, like the whole NFT space we're seeing this sort of the art element of it now with the Bored Ape Yacht Club and all these things that made it famous. But what that I guess some people sort of miss about it is the communities that are behind it. That's the point of it. It's like an access to exclusive communities. And another thing brands are doing, this is a completely different conversation, is using NFTs to build audiences, well, not even audiences, but building audiences, but also like having exclusive communities for their audiences. So how that can look like, exclusive offers or events that they can go to, or all sorts of different things. Like there's NFT projects out there for like investors and people who are helping projects like us. Like I started getting involved in this one called Meta Angels, where there's basically you get the NFT. You don't even need to get the NFT. Actually, you can borrow the NFT from someone else. They can lend it to you, and then you get exclusive access to this. You should definitely check it out, by the way. I think they'd be really interested in what you're doing. You get exclusive access to this group of investors who love this space, like they love the space that we're in, and they're willing to give you support, give you loans, all these sorts of things. So there's just like, it's not just this picture of a monkey, it's this whole community behind it. And of course, if you're a gym, you can have gym membership as an NFT. You just go in and show your NFT, and then that's how you get in. There's already movie tickets. There's an app called Vivi where you can have like an NFT of like it was James Bond. It was like the recent James Bond movie, and you actually get that NFT ticket, and it gives you like 7 tickets to go, and you get like a sort of event around it. So yeah, I can see it being such a huge thing, and then AR then can be a way of expressing that you have that, if that's like a bragging right, or it was just something that's you want to have as your expressive identity and showing. Yeah.
Speaking of movies, I definitely could see how augmented reality could completely replace projectors. Like, movie theaters are on their way out, sadly. I love them, but they are. But why not have an augmented reality movie and watch it from your glasses? That could also be an augmented reality NFT, that movie.
Right, yeah, like everyone can own like an edition of the whoever it is, like Marvel. You could own like Captain America, and all of you own Captain America in this Captain America crew. That'd be awesome. I think I think you're right.
That's dangerous. I have a projector too. It's like almost a decade old, but yeah. I don't see why they wouldn't replace it. If you've already experienced a documentary in VR, it's amazing, and it's so much better than IMAX that that it just puts it to shame. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to do that for film and enhance that area as another area.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, but you're 100% right. There's so many different ways of using it. Like people in schools can use it. You can have like, I don't know, Lady Gaga teaching singing. You could have Neil deGrasse Tyson teaching physics, and you could just have them in the classroom somewhere. Even if that's what classrooms are going to be like, then who knows? And that could be like that. Whatever company comes up with that can have that in every school around the country. So that's just a business idea for someone I just gave them. You just pay him one time. I don't know how much he's going to charge, probably quite a lot. But he loves to teach children. So Yeah, so this is amazing discussion. I think maybe we should have another one pretty soon about NFTs and things. But I was just going to ask you, is there any resources that you'd recommend to anyone sort of interested in finding out about this?
There's so much. I'm trying my best to present so much. I do tutorials on making augmented reality experiences. You can find me on my Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. They're all the same handles, Kim Alban. And I'm also documenting. I recently just documented how to make a Web3 website, which is that NFT website that I was talking about, on my handles as well. And I'm trying to share that more in my Notion space, which you can find in my link in bio on my handles.
Amazing. Okay, yeah, I'll link it down below. But yeah, amazing. Thanks so much for this. I'm super interested in chatting